If tomorrow all things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, where the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota
To the hills of Tennessee,
across the plains of Texas, oh, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, oh, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'm gonna stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless this country. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
God bless the USA and God bless all of us. Welcome to the, Tuesday? Once again, it's 3 o'clock my time, so I can't see my calendar. I believe it's Tuesday here in the world, and this is the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I am, of course, your host, Hat, in a dark room. Very, very bright here today, and I was in the front room and got a big blast of sun, and my migraine just slithered right in off the back of my brain. So I've got a Nurtec dissolving in my mouth right now. Should be good, but just can't have any lights on beyond just the open window, folks. So it's not your screen, it's me. I just had to do it, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get through the show. But anyway, welcome everyone. Of course, we are still seeing more and more fallout from the absolute disastrous decision of the diaper wearer-in-chief to just leave Afghanistan with no plan whatsoever except to be gone and to get while the getting's good. I guess that was his thinking, because obviously nothing worked. And I've got some really depressing stories that I've seen over the past half a day, 24 hours, that I'll get to over time. But it just, it's the only good news that I've seen so far is that we do have complete control of the airport in Kabul, and it doesn't look like the Taliban are in any mood to strike up a fight with the American forces at the airport. That's as far as it goes, though. I'll get into the rest of that in a moment. Michael North says in the D-Live chat, Biden's plan is to run away. Scully says we like you better in the dark, and he capitalizes dark. Interesting. I am a dark chocolate fan, so maybe that has something to do with it. I hadn't thought of it that way. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into some fun stuff, and then we'll drive into the rest of it. So, of course, let's start with a Babylon Bee bookend. I just saw this one as I was going live, and it is the most perfect one you can find because, as you know, Facebook and Instagram have banned, Snapchat, sorry, have banned the Taliban accounts, but Twitter hasn't. Twitter is allowing the Taliban to coordinate all of its in-country and especially in Kabul takeover plans via Twitter with reckless abandon. So, of course, whenever there's a vacuum, people seek to fill it, and we have no better example than to write here from the Babylon Bee's text section. Trump sneaks back onto Twitter by disguising himself as Taliban spokesperson. And here we have a picture of a suspiciously familiar-looking man in a full beard and a headdress with the name Donhamid Trumpistan at Donhamid Trumpistan 1. Hashtag We Will Make America Great Again. Allah be praised. Joined August 2021. 1,630 following, 10,000 followers. Dateline United States. Trump has been allowed back on Twitter after disguising himself as one Donhamid Trumpistan, a newly hired spokesperson for the Taliban, as Trump had previously been banned from the service, then allowed back on after disguising himself as a spokesperson for the Chinese Communist Party, then banned again once he couldn't help himself and started claiming the election was stolen again. This is simply his latest ploy to get back on social media. Quote, Allah be praised. Allah is pretty great, maybe the best ever. Everyone says so. Trumpistan wrote on Twitter as his first post. That Joe Biden is really screwing things up over here. What a sad, pathetic loser. Oh man, they're making me do the prayer thing now. Why do I need to pray? Very humiliating. Not good. He also promised to make Afghanistan great again and wrote on his new Twitter account that Afghanistan is back, baby. Jack Dorsey caught on to what Trump was doing pretty quickly, but wasn't able to do anything about it. Quote, this guy says he's a Taliban spokesperson, and it would be wrong of us to silence someone of a different culture. Now, if he starts questioning whether our government and election practices are worth trusting, then we can ban him immediately. We're keeping a close watch on this Trumpistan person. Close quote. At publishing time, Trump had asked his Taliban associates if they could, quote, maybe consider not doing the full burqa thing on all these beautiful ladies. Close quote. Babylon Bee, everyone. All right. So, maybe it was a delayed reaction. Maybe it's because of the newest discussions of the another COVID Delta variant plus the Lambda variant surging up from South America. But we saw an absolute massive pullback on every major indice on the market today, from Dow Jones to Bitcoin. Everything fell and fell big, except for gold. Gold only fell a little bit. Otherwise, it was really, really distressing. In fact, Bitcoin led the losses today. It's currently at over 2% below its previous mark, at barely over 45,000 a coin right now. Remember, Bitcoin was up around 47,000 not too long ago. But of course, the big loser on the top three was the NASDAQ, down almost a full percent at 14,656 and change. So now incredibly far below the coveted 15,000 mark. The S&P 500 was also down over 0.7%, and the Dow Jones is down almost a full 0.8%, currently at 35,343 and change, an over 280 point drop from yesterday's close. So an absolute massive bloodletting across the board today. And again, gold only lost a couple of bucks. So it was the best of the losers today. Crude oil is now at $66.77 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. down almost full 0.8% from its previous mark, and still falling, still falling. Interesting news, though, that I found as I was digging this stuff up today. Palantir Technologies. Palantir Technologies, as I understand it, is a I think they're a biotech firm. I'm not sure, but I think they're biotech, and they had a big day back last week when their stock just absolutely shot up from 22.35 to hang on here, let me get it right, to 25.72, a massive jump, and it's been seeing some slight profit taking since then. But Palantir made a really interesting move last quarter that didn't come out into the news until just now. It seems that they bought $50 million in gold bars last month, preparing for a, quote, black swan. And for those of you not familiar, a black swan is financial markets terminology for an event that buries the markets. And they use that term because of the fact that the most rare thing in nature basically is a black swan. So a rarefied event on the markets would be a complete and utter destruction of the value, and so it's referred to as a black swan event. And Palantir Technologies, their stock's down 2.2% as of close. They had a 10Q filing last week, and Barron's reported, quote, in the filing, such purchase, the gold purchase, will initially be kept in a secure third-party facility located in the northeastern United States, and the company is able to take physical possession of the gold bars stored at the facility at any time within reasonable notice. Chief Operating Officer Shaiman Sankar tells Bloomberg, quote, you have to be prepared for a future with more black swan events. Palantir has approximately $2.3 billion in cash and is exploring creative uses for the money. The company said during its Q1 earnings conference call in May that it was considering investing in Bitcoin. Now, I am not giving anyone financial advice, but there are two schools of thought regarding where your money should be if it's not going to be in the stock market, and that would be in physical securities like gold or silver or platinum or titanium, something like that. It's something that you could hold on to, that you could buy a physical specimen of and keep somewhere safe. There are also precious metal IRAs, but you don't have possession of that commodity. It's just floating out there in ones and zeros like anything else. And then there's Bitcoin, which is ones and zeros. So the thinking goes, if World War III happens, gold would be useful, silver would be useful, platinum would be useful, because they have technological uses above and beyond just being as a means of barter. Whereas if the internet gets wiped out, then how are you going to get to your Bitcoin? And on the other hand, people say, well, they're constantly finding more gold and more silver and more et cetera, et cetera. There may be a day where we can actually mine asteroids and bring back trillions of dollars worth of the stuff at a time. Whereas there's only so many Bitcoin, and there will never be any more beyond the few that are created every so often through mining operations. So Bitcoin is a non-volatile asset. But again, I'm not giving anyone financial advice. I'm just giving you some of the thinking out there. But again, a real big down day on the markets today, and we'll just have to see what kind of recovery we can look forward to from there. Michael North says in the DLive chat, historical precedent, gold will always be gold. Scully says the ocean is full of gold. It is. It certainly is. It certainly is. But I think Scully puts it best. Guns and ammo. Yeah, that is a commodity that will never, ever go out of style unless we ultimately convert to energy weapons. But let's be honest, folks. I put myself in a really good position by setting up myself as an ammo reloader years ago. Unfortunately, with my brain damage, it's a lot harder for me to do it than it was before, because I'm easily distracted now, and making ammunition is not the kind of thing you want to do when you're easily distracted. So it takes me a lot longer to do it than it would before. But still, I basically have a money-making machine, and so it's good to have. It's good to have. All right, now let's get to the news of the day, which is, of course, the continued debacle that is Afghanistan. I've got updates on what's happening, but this is something from yesterday that I think really bears everyone seeing. I saw it yesterday after it happened, and then I was reminded of it earlier when I was watching Dan Bongino's podcast from today. Not his radio show, but his Rebel podcast. And he also brought this clip out. And what you have is an actual veteran, a real honest-to-God first lieutenant who was involved in training the Afghan National Defense Force, the Afghan security forces, and who also is intimately involved with an organization that he founded that is dedicated to basically saving the lives of the Afghani nationals, who helped the U.S. and the Allies during the war, and who laid their lives on the line in the event of the horrific event of a Taliban takeover. So to give you a lead-in, of course, this is on MSNBC, and we've got Brian Williams as Dan Bongino referred to him today, 4-star General Brian Williams. Remember, the guy whose helicopter was hit by an RPG, even though it wasn't. An RPG was fired at one of the helicopters in his stick, if you will, his flight. But somehow that came out in his mind as being they were hit by an RPG while he was in the helicopter, which is right up there with Hillary Clinton saying that she got off the plane under sniper fire in Kosovo, which, again, nothing was farther from the truth, and these people think that no one will ever remember that. Somehow Brian Williams is still a newsman, but he's on MSNBC, so not that much of news. But they rehabilitated him as best they could. But anyway, so they watched the speech, and Williams has this panel. And we all saw the speech yesterday. We watched it live. You guys heard my take on it. You all had your various comments on it as well. I thought we did a pretty good job describing it. But here is Brian Williams' take on the speech, which will not surprise you. And then here is a real live military person who has dedicated their life to helping the people who helped him and other Americans, and listen to the pushback that Williams gets. This is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful.
Matt Zeller, former first lieutenant during the war in Afghanistan, former combat advisor with Afghan security forces, co-founder of No One Left Behind, a veterans organization that offers services to former Afghan and Iraqi interpreters who resettle here in the United States. Mr. Zeller, it's almost ironic now to state the name of the organization you founded, given what we're watching go on, though I'm curious to hear your reaction of this consequential speech by the American president. Didn't run from it. He owned it. He owned his decision. He owned the fact that, as he put it, the buck stops with him.
I hope he gets to own their deaths, too. I feel like I watched a different speech than the rest of you guys. I was appalled. There was such a profound, bold-faced lie in that speech. The idea that we planned for every contingency. I have been personally trying to tell this administration since it took office. I've been trying to tell our government for years that this was coming. We sent them plan after plan on how to evacuate these people. Nobody listened to us. They didn't plan for the evacuation of our Afghan wartime allies. They're trying to conduct it now at the 11th hour. The thing that they were most concerned about was the optics of a chaotic evacuation. Well, they got exactly what they were most concerned of by failing to do what was right when we could have done it. We had all the people and equipment in place to be able to save these people months ago, and we did nothing.
That goes on for...
And it does go on now. I'll step away from Dan from that, but he did go on, and Brian Williams. Obviously, they had to cut away from Brian Williams while the guy was talking, because you would have probably seen Williams tying a noose around his neck and trying to hang himself from a nearby rafter, watching himself get owned as quickly and as statistically perfectly as this guy was doing. It just was, he laid it out. He absolutely laid it out. And again, there's more. And we saw that yesterday. We all talked about it yesterday. But and I listened to the news all last night, all this morning, up until when I started my game stream, and I started on the news right after I got off. And it's just one bad piece of news after another, except that, as I understand it, the Taliban has made some contact with the American forces at the airport and has said, we're not going to bother you guys. We're not going to bother you guys. That's the good news. The bad news is the Taliban has taken positions all around the airport. Remember, the airport's in the middle of Kabul, basically. It's not like Bagram, which was out 20 minutes away by helicopter, closer to the mountains, where it was easily defensible. The airport, this is the civilian Afghan airport, and it is right in the middle of the city. And it is completely indefensible beyond a perimeter. If the Taliban wanted to, they could start lobbing mortars into that airfield, and there'd be nothing we could do about it. They could be behind a building and just start lobbing mortars and cratering the runway and completely denying us access to anything other than small aircraft. And there'd be nothing we could do about it. Absolutely nothing. But anyone else? If anyone else is having problems seeing me on a DLive, let me know. So far, it's just dog, but let me know. Anyway, because I've got a perfect connection here according to my software. But the thing is, though, the Taliban, they have that apron, if you will, around the airport. They're not letting anyone in. There are, at a minimum, 5,000 to 10,000 Americans in Kabul at present who are not at the airport. And the administration can't even give you an exact number as to how many that is. 5,000 to 10,000 is as close as you can get to an accurate number from the administration. And they are all just basically hunkered down because the Taliban are stopping people and checking for any papers that they may have, and checking their phones, and making people show them their phones, show them text messages, show them pictures. Anything that could be on there that would identify you as working with the Americans puts you in serious danger. And we have to worry about possible hostage situations. And even if the Taliban says, okay, fine, if you're an American, you can come through. Okay. What about all the Afghan nationals who worked for us? I heard today on Bongino and elsewhere that it's being reported that the Taliban has all of the biometric data from the Afghan government and the U.S. forces, which means they have retinal scans and fingerprints of everyone who worked with us. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to carry a fingerprint scanner with you. hook it up to a smartphone via Bluetooth, and go into someone's house and just say, here, put your finger on this. I could teach anyone how to do that in 2 minutes. And those people, if they approach the perimeter at the airport, they're challenged. I've seen a couple instances of people getting through, but very few, very few. Most of them are hiding. They're calling people in the U.S. and they're asking my neighbors about me. They know I live around here, and they're going door to door looking for me. And that's one person. That's just one person I've heard of specifically, and that was a person talking to Sarah Carter, the reporter. She knows this person personally. They worked with her husband when he was in Afghanistan. He was blinded by an explosion in 2011, and he was rotated out, obviously. But she knows these people personally, and they called her and said they're coming for us, and we can't get out. Electric Jug says maybe an EMP to destroy our left behind electronics. Well, the thing is, the electronics are scattered all around the country, and if you use an EMP on that, then you use the EMP on everything. So it would not only wipe out those electronics, but it would wipe out the electronics of anyone who we were trying to use, or electronics of people that we were trying to help. So it would put everybody in a blackout. It would have probably just as bad of an outcome as if everyone had access to it. I don't think there'd be really 6 of one, half dozen of another there. I do see your point, though. By the way, the other thing about the biometric data, we were talking about all of the helicopters and aircraft that the Taliban took over. And some people were making the case, well, they can't fly them. You know, these are, oh, by the way, I kept calling them 8th century religious zealots. I think they're actually 6th century, but maybe 8th century. I could have it wrong, but somewhere in there. I could have been giving them a couple hundred years too much credit. But they have the biometric data, which means they know where all the pilots live, or at least who they are, and can track them down. And so then you have to ask yourself, if the Taliban comes to you and says, we want you to fly combat missions for us, or will do things to your family, what do you do? Well, yeah, the thing is with passwords, though, Scully, is that they have to be logged in somewhere. And any password can be hacked with enough power. And let's face it, Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia, they have the security capabilities to crack those passwords. If they can break into the Department of Defense, they can break into the password on an MRAP at an army base somewhere in Afghanistan. And White Fox Liz, you're never late. You're just fashionably on time, as I like to think it. But so anyway, surprisingly enough, Jen Psaki came back from vacation today. I thought she was going to be gone for a week, but turned out that that was just a bit of fake news. Jen's back, stronger than ever, but she had a pretty bad day of it today. Certainly not going to play any clips of her, but I have some descriptions of what went on. First off, though, before Peppermint Patty came on, we had Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan, of course, is the National Security Advisor to the Diaper Wearer-in-Chief. And you have to either compliment him on having a good plan that the president didn't follow, or damning him for having a good plan and allowing the president not to follow it. Or, option C, he had the same plan as the president and stood by and watched it happen, and now has to try and explain the mess. I'm going to go with option C myself, because Jake Sullivan is an all-around idiot and always has been. But Sullivan was asked today about all of the equipment that was left behind. And again, we're talking tens of billions of dollars worth of helicopters alone, not to mention firearms, ammunition, attack helicopters, MRAPs, other armored vehicles. During the White House press briefing, Sullivan was asked what will happen with the billions of dollars in equipment, including guns, ammunition, helicopters, and more, given to the Afghanistan government in the 2 decades before its collapse. Quote, "We don't have a complete picture, obviously, of where every article of defense materials has gone, but certainly a fair amount of it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban, and obviously we don't have a sense that they are going to readily hand it over to us at the airport." That's the National Security Advisor, folks. I don't know if he was trying to be cute or if he really believed that the soldiers at the airport were in a position to ask the Taliban, hey, would you mind flying that stuff back to us? You know, and we'll put it out on the next group of C5s and get it out of here. What the hell kind of an answer is that? We don't have a sense they're going to readily hand it over to us at the airport. It's your fault we're stuck at the airport as it is. By the way, speaking of the airport, flights have resumed, commercial and military. Problem, as I said, the Taliban own every approach to the airport. And so what once was a crush of people trying to get out is now just a few people. According to what I saw earlier today, aircraft are taking off, but there's hardly anybody on them because the people who were trying to get out before are out, and now no one else can get into the airport. Case in point, there's an aircraft called the A400M. It is the European version of the Lockheed C-130. Hercules. I've flown in the C-130. Beautiful aircraft. The C-130 is a 4-engine turboprop that can carry a fighting vehicle. You can put one of those right inside a C-130 and it'll fly it there. It's got a ramp on the bottom. You can drive the thing off, or you can put it on a pallet with parachutes and you can parachute the thing into wherever it wants to go. It's an incredibly capable aircraft. I loved flying on it. Incredible aircraft. The A400M is the C-130 on steroids. Beautiful aircraft. It can land on pretty much any surface that isn't rough. So it can land on sand, it can land on snow. Very capable aircraft, and big, really big. And it's also a turboprop, meaning it's got propellers, but it uses jet engines to turn the propellers. And an A400M left Afghanistan yesterday with 7 people on it, not including the crew. 7 people. Now, compare that to the picture we saw before, where you had an American C-17 Globemaster, or Loadmaster. Is it the Loadmaster or the Globemaster? I think it's the Loadmaster, actually. I think the Globemaster is a C5. But anyway, a C-17, our largest available cargo aircraft of recent manufacture, and there were 600 people on it. It was packed to the gills. In fact, it was overweight, technically. The crew, by manual specifications, shouldn't have taken off, but they went for it, and they were able to get out of there. But now you've got these big aircraft with no one on them. So, so let's get back to some more. Let's see. Yeah, we've got there's video, of course, coming out of the Taliban walking up to people and just beating them half to death in the streets. Here's an interesting piece that I saw yesterday. Pardon me, this morning. Excuse me. I saw this morning. There is a fairly frequent guest on Fox who is a lifetime pollster. She works for Melansky and Partners. Her name's Lee Carter. This is a picture over here. And she did real-time polling with Democrats, Republicans, and Independents during Biden's speech yesterday. And I use the term speech literally only because it's the only English word that I can use without getting kicked off of a lot of platforms. It wasn't technically a speech. But she had real-time polling going on. And so what happens is she has people sitting in a room in front of the screen watching the event, and they have dials in front of them. And if they like what's going, they turn the dial one way. If they don't like what's happening, they turn the dial the other way. And if they don't care, then they leave the dial in the middle. And so she was doing this real time, and there are bars that go across the screen as she produces the material. There's a red bar for Republicans, a blue bar for Democrats, and a yellow bar for Independents. And I haven't seen the whole tape, but there were a few snippets of it on Fox and Friends. And the grade is what's important, though. That the Democrats overall on the speech gave Biden a C, whereas the Independents and Republicans both gave Biden an F. Now, you would expect that from the Republicans, certainly. There are only a handful of Republicans in the country who would give Biden the time of day, like 19 senators, for instance. But they weren't in the focus group. The interesting part, though, is the fact that not only did Independents also give him an F, but the Democrats only gave him a C. They were the most charitable when he was talking about pulling out. You know, we needed to pull out. It was time to leave. That's when the Democrats were the most charitable to Biden. But whenever he talked about it's everyone else's fault but mine, these people did this, that person did that, these people did this, the graph just started dipping below the 50% line, and that blue bar went below 50% and stayed there and didn't come back up until he started getting back on about how, you know, this was the right thing to do. And of course, the whole thing is, no one was arguing except for a few people that we shouldn't get out of Afghanistan. The majority of the country has been saying for years that they want us out. What we want to know is, why was it done this way? Why was it done in the absolute worst possible way to give us the absolute worst possible outcome? That's what we want to know, and we didn't get any of that yesterday. Not one iota of explanation as to why it was done this way. Instead, it was nothing but lies. The only time Biden told the truth yesterday was when he said America doesn't want to be in Afghanistan anymore. For the most part, that's correct. He also didn't lie when he said he's been wanting to get out of Afghanistan for quite a long time. That's true as well. He didn't want to be in Afghanistan when he was vice president. But it's not a matter of whether or not we should have gotten out. It's why did we get out the way that you took us out? That's what we want to know. And we have gotten not one answer on that from him, from the Department of Defense, from the NSA, from anyone. We've not gotten one answer as to why. And I doubt we ever will. I doubt we ever will. That makes parents, Skullcram. I can't read that out loud without getting in trouble, but that is what makes parents. Yes. Afghanistus interruptus. Yeah. Fighting with Michael North says a fighting withdrawal would have been possible if very difficult. I don't. Again, it depends on how you look at things from the way Trump laid it out. And Mike Pompeo has been on TV a couple times over the past 96 hours, and he's laid out the fact that we did have a plan with the Taliban for us to pull out, but it was performance-based. We told the Taliban, if you mobilize on a region, if you attack, we will halt the pullout and we will crush you. There will be consequences if you interrupt the plan, and they will be severe. That was our plan the whole time. And Biden says, well, Trump gave me this plan, this deal. You know, the only thing Trump did that Biden said that Biden had to follow through on, everything else Trump did, Biden threw away and chopped into little pieces and then set on fire and did the exact opposite. But somehow pulling out of Afghanistan, that's Trump's fault. But it wasn't going to happen that way under Trump. And again, May 1st, we had a deal. We'll be out by May 1st if you behave. But anything happens, and you're done. You're over with. And Biden said, we're leaving. Just don't shoot at us. And took every piece of support away from the Afghan government, the Afghan security forces, and the Afghan people that we had provided them for the last 20 years. Took it all away within weeks. And then he stands there on national television and complains how the Afghan government said, well, don't take everyone out because we don't want a crisis of faith. A month ago, you were telling us all, Joe, that there were no problems in Afghanistan, that everything was fine. So why should the Taliban government, why should the Afghani government say, hey, get our people out, when you're telling them everything's just fine, nothing's going to go wrong? And then you complain that the Afghani forces don't fight when you took away every option we gave them in order to be able to fight effectively. And a thing that I didn't know yesterday, I knew a little, but not until later yesterday. I did not know. From 2011 on, Afghanis, 50,000 Afghani combat deaths fighting the Taliban since we created their force. 50,000. As opposed to, I think, about 2,300 Americans dead. 50,000. And Biden says that they didn't have the will to fight. Do you think that's not going to drive a lot of people into the arms of the Taliban too? Well, they've got the drones now, Scully. They've got all the drones. Yeah, LB just said. Yeah, they've got all the drones. And here's the thing. A drone's good for high-value targets. But you can't use a drone to take out an advancing brigade taking over a town. That would take bombs. Not just a missile, but bombs. And we can't get aircraft to Afghanistan now unless they fly through unfriendly territory. Pakistan has kicked us out. We can't overfly Pakistan. And India would have to let our bombers come up through there. And now India is staring down the face of China coming into Afghanistan. And India's already fighting a border war with China as it is. So it's gone. Afghanistan's gone. There's nothing we can do about it now. Nothing we can do about it. We're going to be lucky if we get anyone else out after today, because anyone who's at the airport by now is already out. It's just a matter of, will the Taliban let anyone else through? And we just don't know right now. We just don't know. All right, so let's move on from here. Let's see what else we've got. Let me update the Daily Wire here. All right, here's an interesting story. This is Emily Zanotti from the Daily Wire. Senate Dems to seek, quote, full accounting of Biden admins, again quoting flawed Afghan withdrawal. Again, folks, the Republicans are in the minority in both houses. McConnell gave Schumer the majority in the Senate. They are not sharing power. And if you want a investigation launched by a committee in Congress, you pretty much need to own the committee chair, or you're going to be the minority committee and you're not going to have subpoena power. So the question we've been asking ourselves for the past few days is anyone going to hold this administration, including the national security advisors, the intelligence community, and the Department of Defense, is anyone going to hold these people accountable? Well, for that to happen, we need Democrats to step up. And it looks like that may be happening. Now, I'm not going to give you any guarantees as to what's going to come out of it, but I have this for you. The Senate Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committees, both chaired by Democrats, will launch investigations into the flawed American withdrawal from Afghanistan, which left up to 10,000 American citizens and 40,000 allies stranded as the Taliban closed in on the capital city of Kabul. Senior Democrats say they're not convinced the Biden administration thought through the withdrawal itself, and both Senator Bob Menendez, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and Senator Mark Warner, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, say they will use their positions to investigate the bungled exit. Quote, Senate Democrats on Monday promised they would investigate how and why the U.S. military departure from Afghanistan was bungled, even as most people in President Biden's party said they supported his decision to pull American troops out of the country. And this is according to Yahoo News. Continuing, Senator Mark Warner vowed to use his perch as chair of a powerful Senate committee to get to the bottom of why Biden has had to send roughly 7,000 U.S. troops back to Afghanistan to stabilize the situation in which desperate Afghans swarmed the airport in Kabul. Biden noted on Monday that he felt the need to pull American forces from the country before the U.S. embarked on the third decade of an Afghan conflict, but did not mention what would happen to the 7,000 troops now being sent in to ensure a full evacuation. And that is another thing that came out of the press conference today. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. There's a picture of an embattled peppermint patty. This was from today. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki declined to answer whether the Biden administration would commit to keeping U.S. troops on the ground in Afghanistan past August 31st if there are still American citizens trying to get out of the country. Now remember, Jake Sullivan went on first today. And he was asked this question, and he dodged it completely. I'll get to that in a second, but here's Peppermint Patty. And again, thank you, Ray, for Peppermint Patty. A reporter asked, I know we all tried to ask Jake this question, but can you offer any guarantee to the American and Afghan allies that if they remain there past the end of the month, U.S. troops will help them evacuate past the end of the month? Psaki responded, our focus right now is on doing the work at hand and the task at hand. and that is day by day getting as many American citizens, as many SIV applicants, that's special visa applicants, as many members of vulnerable population who are eligible to be evacuated to the airport and put out on planes. And we're going to do that in an expeditious fashion. That is the focus of the President, of our Secretary of Defense, have our Secretary of State, and everybody on our national security team. So that is where we will keep our efforts. And again, Jake Sullivan was asked that same question, and his response is, so I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. What I'm going to do is stay focused on the task at hand, which is getting as many people out as rapidly as possible, and we will take that day by day. The reporter pressed, so you can't commit to bring back every American? Sullivan did not answer the question and called on another reporter. They might as well have just stayed on vacation, folks. Oh, in a bit of a tearjerker, Tim Tebow got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars, folks. Many of you may not have even known, but Tim Tebow was given a tryout with the Jacksonville Jaguars as a tight end. It ended this morning. He was released from the Jaguars, so he's no longer in the NFL. He had signed a one-year contract to play with them back in May, but he made it through one preseason game, and now he's out. So, hey, you know what? He tried. He tried. God bless him. He tried. All right. Emily Zanotti with the Daily Wire from today. Reports now indicate that intelligence reports were predicting the collapse of the Afghan army as recently as July, and that the White House was behind the curve in handling a rapidly deteriorating situation on the ground, even as President Biden was reassuring the public that the Afghanistan government would hold following the U.S.'s withdrawal. The New York Times, in a report Tuesday, countered the Biden administration's public statements, including that the Taliban onslaught was unexpected and that the debacle in Kabul played out faster than anticipated. Quote, again, this is the New York Times, folks, so take it or leave it. You know, this is the New York Times, but this is what they said. Classified assessments by American spy agencies over the summer painted an increasingly grim picture of the prospect of a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan and warned of the rapid collapse of the Afghan military, even as Biden and his advisors said publicly that was unlikely to happen as quickly, according to current and former American government officials. Quoting them further, by July, many intelligence reports grew more pessimistic, questioning whether any Afghan security forces could muster serious resistance and whether the government could hold on in Kabul, the capital. President Biden said on July 8th that the Afghan government was unlikely to fall and that there would be no chaotic evacuations of Americans, similar to the end of the Vietnam War. One particular report issued in July even seemed to predict the situation that played out in Kabul, quote, noting that the Afghan government was unprepared for a Taliban assault, and that once certain areas fell to Taliban forces, the rest could topple like dominoes. I almost said dynamos. A Biden administration official claimed to the Times that, although the warnings grew dire, quote, intelligence agencies never offered a clear prediction of an imminent Taliban takeover, and that the intelligence community did not have a high degree of confidence in the pessimistic predictions. A report also published Tuesday from Reuters seems to indicate that the Biden administration was behind the curve on high-level decisions in Afghanistan, and the administration badly misjudged the on-the-ground situation in Kabul, leaving even American embassy employees stranded. Quote, and again, this is Reuters. U.S. officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, told Reuters that weeks before the Washington-backed Afghan government collapsed, the U.S. military wanted a bigger role in helping to evacuate Afghans at risk because they worked for the U.S. The officials believed that a more orderly withdrawal would have been likely, quote, but the administration waited too long, to help Afghan allies evacuate before the situation became grim. Quote, quoting a military official, "We could have done a lot more to help. The administration waited too long." Also quoting Reuters, a person familiar with the situation said the administration was behind the curve as things deteriorated. Quote, "Every decision has to come too late and in reaction to events that make the subsequent decision obsolete." The situation was especially problematic at state and among the administration's national security advisors. Diplomats were still arriving in Kabul even as the Taliban closed in, and on Sunday, embassy workers were receiving emails, they say, even as they could hear gunshots ringing nearby. Wow. I did not know that people were still arriving in Kabul these past few months. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And on Sunday, embassy workers were receiving emails even as they could hear gunshots ringing nearby. So in other words, stick to your post. And as I said, folks, the Taliban owns every avenue to the airport. No one gets in to the airport without their absolute approval. Period. Here's the story I referenced earlier. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Many thousands of Afghans who have been employed by Western embassies and non-government organizations in Kabul remain stranded and unable to reach the airport for evacuation flights as the Taliban erected checkpoints at airport entrances, whipping and beating Afghans who attempted to cross. Some evacuation flights were leaving near empty as a result. The German military's A400M Airbus, with a capacity of well over 100 passengers, took off Tuesday with just 7 passengers aboard. Thousands of Americans are also believed to be trapped behind the checkpoints, though the exact number of Americans is unknown. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby told CNN that there are certainly thousands of Americans. We don't have an exact count. Best guess between 5 and 10,000 that are near Kabul. He continued, there was a message put out by the State Department today advising those Americans about how to queue up and how to get to the airport. So that now that security's better, they don't need to necessarily shelter in place. They can begin movement to the airport for processing. All right, so here's some good news. Let's get to some good news. The Texas Supreme Court has initially sided with Governor Abbott and H.E. Paxton to ban mask mandates. You guys will remember last month Abbott signed an executive order banning mask mandates, vaccine passports, vaccine requirements for entry into businesses, all that. And a couple of independent school districts in Texas immediately threw up mask mandates anyway, including in Bexar County, which is where San Antonio is. It's spelled B-E-X-A-R, by the way. You can always tell a newbie to Texas when they pronounce it Bexar County, which happened to me. I lived there and said that and immediately painted myself as a Yankee. But I learned quickly. But it's Bexar County, but also the Dallas Independent School District, which runs not only the Dallas schools, but the Fort Worth schools. They also put up a mask mandate, and a local judge upheld it. Well, the state Supreme Court has put in a stay on that initial upholding of the mandate. So Texas Supreme Court has said, no, you can't mandate masks. For now, we're going to have a full ruling, but for now, you can't mandate mask wearing. Michael North says, In the D-Life chat, it's notable to note that in Japan there have been 0 mask mandates. People do it as seems necessary, and their culture is less individual. Yes, masks have been a thing in Japan and South Korea for a very long time, and certainly in China as well, and certainly with China because of all the particulate pollutants in the air from all the coal plants. You need the mask just to be able to keep the grit out from your mouth. But it's been shown that really masks don't do a whole lot for viruses. It's been shown way back when by the WHO themselves some years ago, showed that masks don't work against flu viruses. And if they did, we would have been having mask mandates for kids in schools, since the flu kills more kids than COVID does. But that's, as you said, though, they are much less individual. It is much more of a society says, as opposed to my liberty says. Scully says, masks seem trivial at this point. It's a distraction from the more serious questions, like why are we accepting the steal going on in D.C.? If you mean accepting, I understand what you mean, yeah. So, yeah, I understand completely. All right, let's move on. Let's see, what time is it, by the way? Yeah, YouTube, you're out of here. Okay, I gave you enough. In fact, there's nobody even on YouTube right now, so I'm not even going to bother doing my patter. I'm just going to turn it off.